Good morning and thank you for the attention. I will introduce my group members. The first one is Aryani Wijaya, the second is Matilda Clara Lende, the third is Marianus Heri Darmanto, the fourth is Methodius Indra Balimema, the fifth is Octavia Sartika, the sixth is Renaldi Yudhistira Ngaba, the seventh is Rosalind Robohe, the eighth is Darvin Lodiani Pandi, the ninth is Vivian Mudelanova Nunuhitu, and the last is me, Yuvin Kabat Sebamui. We are presenting about fictional and non-fictional literary works. So let me invite them to start our presentation.
The first, Buddhist fiction. When it comes to differences between fiction and non-fiction, Joseph Salvatore, Associate Professor of Writing and Literature at the New School in New York City, says, "I teach a course on a craft, theory, and practice of fiction writing, and in it we discuss this topic all the time. Although all of the ideas and theories are disputed and challenged by writers and critics alike, not only as to what fiction is, but as to what it is in relation to other genres, exempli gracia, creative non-fiction. I'd say there are some basic components of fiction.
Fiction is fabricated and based on the author's imagination. Short stories, novels, myths, legends, and fairy tales are all considered fiction. While settings, plot points, and characteristics in fiction are sometimes based on real-life events or people, little use such things as dubbing or points for their stories. For instance, Stephen King set many of his stories and novels in the fictional town of Daily Maine. While there is not a real place, it is beside of King's actual hometown of Bangor. King has even created an entire topography for Delhi that resembles the actual topography of Bangor.
Additionally, science fiction and fantasy works placed in imaginary worlds often take inspiration from the real world. An example of this is N.K. Jemisin's The Purpose of trilogy, in which he uses actual science and geological research to make your world believable. Fiction often uses specific narrative techniques to enhance impact. The professor says that some examples of these components are
the use of rich, effective sensory detail, the different picking tempos of dramatic and non-dramatic events, the juxtaposition of summarized narrative and dramatized scenes, the temporary delay and withholding of story information, the heightened suspense and complete plot, the use of different points of view to narrative, including start objective, effectment, and deep subjective interiority, and the style shift as of language to narrative events and render human consequence.
I'm Octavia Sartika. What is non-fiction? Non-fiction, by contrast, is factual and reports on true events. The stories, biographies, journalism, and essays are all considered non-fiction. Usually, non-fiction has a higher standard to upload than fiction. Obvious materials or facts in a world of fiction does not make into willing foods. Fabrications in a non-fiction work can foresee the story, choose, or credibility. An example is when James Frey, author of A Million Little Peaches, was kicked out of Oprah's book club in 2006 when it come to light that he had fabricated most of his memoirs.
However, non-fiction often uses many of the techniques of fiction to make it more appealing. In Cold Blood is widely regarded as one of the best works of non-fiction to significantly blur the line between fiction and non-fiction. Science Capote's description and detailing of events are so rich and evocative. However, this has led to questions about the veracity of his account. The so-called new journalists of Thomson's and Wolf's and Gideon's day used the same techniques as fiction writer Salvatore says, and certainly the resurgence of the so-called true crime documentaries, both on TV and radio, use similar techniques.
This has given rise to a new trend called creative nonfiction, which uses the techniques of fiction to report on true events. In his article, What is Creative Nonfiction? Lee Gutkind, the creator of creative nonfiction, defines the term.
Refers to the use of literary craft, the techniques fiction writers, playwrights, and poets employ to present non-fiction, factually accurate prose about real people, and even in a compelling, vivid, dramatic manner. The goal is to make non-fiction stories read like fiction, so that your readers are as enthralled by fact as they are by fantasy.
Although it's sometimes hard to tell the difference between fiction and non-fiction, especially in the hands of a skilled author, just remember this: if it reports the truth, it's non-fiction. If it stretches the truth, it's fiction. Okay, that's all we can share, and thank you for the attention.